No Man's Sky Online. No subscription, no microtransactions, and free for all existing players. Hello Games certainly are sticking with No Man's Sky. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another industry report. Today we have the continuing story of one of gaming's great comebacks. No Man's Sky continues with their most recent announcement being a major step forward to the game, pushing it past the original fantasy that players were sold on, the multiplayer. The launch of this title was inexcusable. It was embarrassing, it did not respect customers, and what they released was just not in line with what they said they would release during interviews. Essentially, lies were kinda told. Well, they were told. Was this a calculated, dastardly thing, or was this just the dev getting overexcited and being loose-lipped about what he thought his team could deliver? It's hard to tell, but I think one thing is for sure. It is kind of incredible how good the post-launch support has been for No Man's Sky, and that's in spite of it having zero business model past the initial sale. For years, they have been continuously updating this game for free, and seemingly will continue to do so, with today's news perhaps being the largest, No Man's Sky Beyond, which has just been announced. In an official news post, developer Hello Games said that each successive No Man's Sky update had been more successful than the last, with last year's next update being their largest ever. According to the post, it brought back millions of players to the game, which is a fairly impressive feat for a game that was essentially marked as being dead on arrival. They initially planned for 2019 to comprise of 3 major updates, however they've since decided to work them all together into one large update that is going to go by the name Beyond. Full details have yet to be announced, but we do know what the first component is, and that is No Man's Sky Online. This part of Beyond includes a, quote, radical new social and multiplayer experience which empowers players everywhere in the universe to meet and play together. It then goes on to say that while it will have many recognizable online elements, that they don't consider No Man's Sky to be an MMO, seemingly because it's not going to require a subscription, won't require microtransactions, and will be free for all existing players. Now, we do know that there are going to be 2 components past this, and since they all interweave, it seems like, yeah, it's just going to make sort of one big cohesive whole, and that's going to be the Beyond update. They say that Beyond is going to be their most ambitious update so far, and that they will continue to support the game in this manner for the foreseeable future. There's a hell of a lot to break down here actually, but let's just start off with the history. So after the disastrous launch, Hello Games went quiet, eventually emerging to announce Foundation, which added in base building and the farming and a bunch of mechanics inside the bases, the ability to purchase freighters, which kind of acted as spaceborne bases, and a bunch more stuff, including a more difficult survival mode and a creative mode. They then followed that up with March 2017's Pathfinder update, which allowed people to share bases with each other. Generally, it just had an expanded base system. It added in a permadeath mode and ground vehicles. They then released Atlas Rises after that, which significantly bulked out the campaign of the game with 30 hours of narrative content, as well as procedurally generated missions, teleportation portals, and a very, very limited version of multiplayer. That would be expanded upon by the next update, No Man's Sky Next, which was essentially expansion sized and released in July of 2018. Next brought a large number of features, many of which players expected at launch, having full multiplayer for up to 4 players with customizable avatars and a third-person camera. They expanded on the base building to be less restricted, even having underwater bases. They added a fleet system for getting loads of ships, and then an accompanying mission system for your fleet, and they generally just bulked out the game's progression in, well, almost every area, as well as significantly improving the planet generation systems of the game. Personally, I hopped back into Next for around 20 hours, and you know what, I actually had a pretty good time. It wasn't perfect, and I wouldn't rate it super high, but I'd say it was definitely worth its price tag at that stage, especially for the multiplayer. And when you look through the Steam reviews, especially the recent ones, I think they're about spot on, with the recent reviews being mostly positive at 72%. Now sure, overall reviews are still 50%, but that's down to the state of the game at launch. The Steam chart, though, is essentially spot on, showing a large bump of positive reviews when the next update came out, with the 343 recent updates from February to the time of recording being that 72% mostly positive. That wasn't all, though. We had No Man's Sky Abyss, which launched in October 2018. It revamped underwater biomes and added in a personal submarine, as well as a few other things. Then Visions came out in November, and that further expanded the game's biome variety, as well as adding in other gameplay features. So there was revamps to alien bases and procedural freighter crash sites, as well as fossilized creatures and a whole bunch of other stuff. It's a hell of a lot of free content. It took ages to get through, but yeah, it's all free. And before we talk about how much this is just a dunk on other players in the industry, let's talk about No Man's Sky Online. Now, Sean said that it's not an MMO, but he did so after establishing that it will have familiar MMO features, and he qualified it not being an MMO by talking about the business model, meaning no MTX or subscription fee. So, with these highly MMO-similar features but no MMO business model, what could it all be? Well, he said that it's about bringing players together galaxy-wide, and I think that represents a shift away from the core gameplay that used to be there, which was essentially just getting to the center of the galaxy. So I kind of suspect that they're trying to turn No Man's Sky from a very directional slog through worlds into a more broad MMO-like sandbox universe, where players are just expected to live in the universe rather than travel through it. Essentially, I think that sandbox features are going to be a big element here, and I've got to wonder if they'll give the game's races territories on the galaxy map, if they'll add in some basic political/territory control systems like what we see in Elite Dangerous. I can really see this ending up as a kind of creative action-adventure version of Elite for a very different audience, but with an emphasis on, like the base building and the exploration. So they'll likely need reworked ship progression, and maybe some reworked economy stuff that's designed to work on a larger scale. Having more in-space events would also be very important for this. I think player hubs would be ideal as well, though I wonder if that's something they'd rather let players work out for themselves rather than dictate, like say EVE Online's JITA system. Looking at the teaser actually, it seems like there's a really large space station with room for multiple ships, so that could be a hint at something like this. Certainly party formation tools, like from an MMO, they would be needed, as well as events to give players like a good reason to travel around the galaxy. They're also going to need to make the various segments of the galaxy actually feel different to each other. And then I suppose they'll need to work out the player traversal over the massive distances of the galaxy in No Man's Sky. So overall, we're just going to have to wait and see what the specifics are, but given how the other pillars of Beyond are quite interlinked with No Man's Sky Online, I'm just expecting big sandbox-style systems just spanning the galaxy. For a game like No Man's Sky, that is perfect. Having the gameplay of No Man's Sky take place in a sandbox MMO shell would really go a long way to fixing the feeling of meaninglessness that comes from the rather pointless journey to the center of the galaxy, which is currently what it's focused on. Now, past that, the wording is not really that clear. So yes, it is going to be free for the existing players, but will it be a paid DLC after launch or something like that? Not 100% sure. Right now, I am just assuming that it is a free update though. While this being a paid DLC actually would make financial sense, and I think they have earned the right to do that given how much they've done for free for this game, but I don't think it would be the best move if their goal was to get as many people on board with a multiplayer experience as they can. But overall, the post-launch support here has been incredible. It has thoroughly clobbered what most other games do. If you want to play the fixed version of Destiny 2, that's going to cost you significantly more than the price of a full game, because you also need the Season Pass. Then, unlike other free content games like Anthem, there are no microtransactions. So you might be wondering, how does this work? Well, basically, I suspect that No Man's Sky sold incredibly well, even when you take the high refund rates into account. They probably exited launch with a fairly large war chest, and being fully privately owned, they were able to make the decision to do stuff for free. They only have to worry about keeping the lights on, they don't have to worry about shareholder returns. Plus, being a smaller team, they would likely have a far, far smaller burn rate than other larger studios, especially ones located in more expensive areas. Then, primarily being an export-based business who are earning their money in dollars, well, the weak value of the sterling will give them pretty good purchasing power. This all means that they can afford to do this consumer-friendly stuff that many other developers quite simply can't, either because the numbers won't work out for them, or because of publisher/investor pressure. The launch of No Man's Sky really, I think, showed them the massive size of the potential market that the game had, and I think it reinforced how they failed to capture that, especially with the high refund rate. Well, if every update reverts refunds and brings new people in, then yeah, No Man's Sky is going to be earning plenty of money, making free updates a viable business model for this studio. they have been able to turn their initial failure into a success story, and that success story has been the pillar of their business model. Altogether, it is quite impressive, and absolutely it is the sort of thing that we should be praising, because the alternative is them saying, sorry guys, it's a pity the game sucked, and just taking the money and running. And I think we can all agree that things would be far worse off for consumers if Hello Games decided to do that. So there you go, that is my thoughts on No Man's Sky Online, a part of No Man's Sky Beyond, which, you know what, I'm very excited about. And also, I think it's just important to bring up stories like this when a developer actually sticks with their game instead of, you know, taking their money and running and abandoning it. I think that is good behavior that we should be giving them the big thumbs up for. So that's that. Of course, big news recap yesterday on the channel, as well as a report on Google on the channel today. There's so much content here, so I hope you enjoy it all. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.